Sales versus capacity, one of my favorite things to talk about in the business. And so in this video, we are going to talk about what you should be focusing on in your practice. Should you be focused on adding more sales, or should you in fact be focused on adding more capacity so that you can expand your vision and provide more room for future sales? So if you're new here, welcome to the channel. All we do around here is talk about how to get your brick and mortar healthcare facility to $200,000 per month in revenue. Now, we don't make any income claims. Like, I certainly don't believe that you're going to watch one video here on sales and capacity and magically overnight be at $200,000 a month. In fact, there's a really small probability that you'll ever even make it to that number because most businesses never even reach $1 million a year. Okay, so what we do here is we take the lessons that we have learned in partnering with healthcare facilities that have exceeded revenues of over $200,000 per month in cash collected, most of which are offering cash or private pay services to their patients. And so today, we are going to be sharing the lessons talking about sales and capacity, and more importantly, giving you an understanding on what you as the business owner watching this video should currently be focused on in order for you to actually get more revenue and break through your current growth plateau in your facility. So if you're new here, welcome in. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. We've got another banger for you today, okay? So in business, a lot of people overcomplicate the idea of business in general, all right? So I like to think about business as two simple things. It's either sales, which we'll go ahead and put over here on the left side of the equation, or it's capacity, okay? These are like the only two macro level constraints that a business can have, okay? And so I want to make a point today for you to understand which of these two is your number one bottleneck in your practice, okay? So we're going to first start with sales. Now, how do you know if you have an opportunity to sell more units, okay? Well, first and foremost, the schedule is not full. Okay, so the schedule is not full. You have to forgive my handwriting, you know, I was never the best handwriter, all right? But the schedule is not full, okay? Next is you're running a low profit margin. So a low profit margin in terms of net income on a monthly basis. So if you look at your P&L, kind of the heartbeat of the business, then you might see that, you know, my profit margin isn't so, like, it's not so great. I'm only making maybe 10% profit, maybe even 15% profit, and I want to get that number up. So you have a low profit margin, okay? So next is low cash flow. So you just don't have like an abundance of free cash flow, okay? So that goes back to the profit margin. If you have a low percentage profit margin, typically in a brick and mortar at least, you're probably going to have low cash flow, okay? So then you're also feeling not busy. Okay, that's more of a feeling-based thing, all right? So what happens in this stage of the business is that you need to be only focused on maximizing your current capacity, okay? So if you think about sales and capacity, and we won't need to go too deep down here, but if you think about sales and capacity, like if this is your capacity of the business, we'll put a C here, but your sales are only here, okay? That means that you have this type of arbitrage. That means that in your business, you can sell up to this point, and then that arbitrage is equal to new profit for you, okay? So you need to start just bridging the sales gap up a little bit here, right? So it's not uncommon that in most businesses it's sales. That's why I wanted to start with that, okay? But there could be actually an opportunity for you in the capacity side as well, which we're going to talk about. But if you're watching this and your schedule's not completely full, you have a low profit percentage, you have low cash flow, you're not feeling busy, those are all key symptoms of you just needing to add more sales to the business, okay? Now, from a capacity standpoint, there's a couple different indications of this, all right? I want to start with a high profit margin. High profit margin, okay? So what happens in businesses is, especially when we get started, when we don't make a lot of money right away, when we take the risk to open our business and we don't cash flow a lot right away, when we start making a high profit margin, we become emotionally attached to that feeling, okay? So for example, let's say you're running like a 40% profit margin. Let's say if you make $100,000 in revenue, that means you end up keeping 40K, okay? That would be a great profit margin for a brick and mortar business, all right? And so what happens though, is when you talk to business owners that are typically doing about 100 grand a month, those are usually the hungry people, to be clear. And these individuals, when you actually ask them about their goals, they're usually like, hey man, I want to get this business from 100 grand a month up to $200,000 a month, okay? But they have a constraint in that they have become emotionally attached to the 40% profit margin. And why that becomes a challenge is because in order for you to substantially grow the business, you have to go into periods of reinvestment, okay? So when you look at a lot of big organizations that are even much larger than $200,000 a month, a lot of them, they run their business like this. And what that means is that every other year is profitable, and then every other year that's not the profit year is a reinvestment year. You have a profitable year, then you have a reinvestment year, profit, reinvestment, right? And so what happens is in these reinvestment years, okay, they might see the profit go down as low as about maybe like 10%. I've even heard some people run their business as low as 5% profit margin during the reinvestment years. And to be fair, it's not like they're not making money in those years. It's just that they know that they have to reinvest. And what are they doing during those reinvestment years is they're adding capacity, okay? They're adding team, they're adding equipment, they're adding space, right? So they're adding these different things in order for them on the following year to be able to increase their sales, okay? So during these reinvestment years, these businesses find that like they could continue to push, but they would rather reinvest in infrastructure and capacity so that they can come back and again sell more units, okay? So another good indication of you needing to add capacity is that you're just burning out. So you're burning out, okay? You're running around too much, you're doing too much stuff, you're making great money, right? But like you're just burning out, okay? There could be also limitations of like, hey, like I'm not burnt out and I'm making great money, but like I don't have like the physical space to add more people, in which case you'd have to add like, you know, more square foot or another location, right? So like there's all these different things that you would have to do, okay? Now for most of you watching, the biggest opportunity by and large is gonna be sales, okay? When capacity hits, these are the things to look for. Are we making great profit margin? Are we just not able to support people because of the physical space or time with the team, okay? And then when it comes down to capacity, because like sales is easy, you just need to get more units. You need to do more marketing, more advertising. We're not gonna talk too deep about that today because that's all we talk about in other videos on this channel. However, from a capacity standpoint, if you're in a situation where you're like, dude, like I need to start offloading stuff off my plate, what should I get rid of first? Okay, how do I actually add capacity, but the most strategic way possible to where I'm still maximizing my unfair advantage and my ability to drive revenue for the company, okay? So here's what we do in that scenario. So you have to look at what is my unfair advantage, okay? So typically, most providers will hold on to two things the longest before they get rid of them. Number one, believe it or not, is sales. Okay? So they're not, and when they add capacity, they'll hire people that allow them to spend the most amount of time on sales. And the second is patient care. Okay? Patient care. That's a P. So patient care is obviously the unfair advantage of the doctor if you're watching this video. If you're not the doctor, then this might not be your unfair advantage. But if you are, sales, revenue driving activity, and patient care. So the patient care is also a revenue retention activity. It may not drive new business, right? Obviously like referrals and stuff, but that would be in the sales category, okay? So in this particular case, the reason why you hold on to patient care is because nobody else can do it. You are the doctor, right? You have the unfair advantage. And to be honest, like many people, they enjoy the patient care. And that's why they went to school. They don't want to get rid of this part, okay? So when you are going to add capacity, you typically want to hold on to these two things the longest, okay? Now there are the next level of this is really like personality driven, okay, and really just like really like introspective, okay? You have to have self-awareness for this next phase. Because if you get to the point where you're only doing sales and patient care, some docs are eventually going to want to get rid of this. They'll hire an associate. They'll get rid of the delivery portion of their business. They'll hire an associate to take care of the patients, okay? Other docs are like, hey, listen, like I love taking care of patients. I'm going to hire someone to lead my sales and marketing, okay? So at this point, you have a choice to make. And then the next level past this is that you just have everybody running your business for you because the enterprise is just that big and you just have freedom of choice to just kind of be, you know, either a back seat and kind of a passive owner, or you can go just be only doing like the stuff that you want to do, which may be sales, and maybe executive level stuff, and maybe patient care on occasion, right? So you'll start to have like freedom of choice at a certain scale. But as you're getting there, these are the two things that I would recommend holding on to for as long as you can. Because this drives revenue, and as the CEO and doctor, you've also acquired the title of chief executive officer, right? Or at least owner. So that means that you are solely responsible for the growth of your organization. A lot of docs actually that I've talked to, they forget that component, okay? They're like, well, I'm the doctor. I'm like, well, do you own the business? And they're like, yes. Well, I'm like, well, you're also responsible for growing the business then, right? Unless you have other people that are in the seats on the bus that are like only there to help you grow the company, then it's your responsibility, okay? So don't forget the sales component. That is a high revenue generating thing. A lot of people try to get rid of it too soon, okay? Or they hire someone that has no clinical sales experience, and then they're like, okay, go ahead, and then they can't close like the doctor can, and they're like, I don't know why they can't close. And I'm like, I have an idea, okay? So try to hold on to sales as long as you can, naturally patient care as well. Now, with all of this, I want to talk about one other thing, which is the theory of single constraints. Because if you simplify the business, at any given time at a macro level, you could only have one singular constraint, which is either going to be your sales. You need to sell more units, or you need to increase capacity to be able to sell more units, okay? So I want to walk you through a very important exercise, okay? And actually, I can't take full credit for all this. I learned this from a book I'm reading by one you guys may know. Is a famous doctor, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He wrote a book called Evolve Your Brain, okay? And so in the book, indirectly, he talks about single constraint theory. Now, you might be wondering, how does this relate back to marketing and sales? You'll see, okay? So in the single constraint theory, in his book, they did a study, okay? And this is a really awesome study that I think you'll take a lot from. They did a study with 4 groups, and those groups were learning how to play piano, okay? And those groups were subject to different conditions, and then what they did at the end of the study is they looked to see the region of the brain that's responsible for learning how to play the piano, and they looked to see how much change or positive manipulation occurred in the brain as it related to learning the piano, okay? And here are the 4 groups, okay? So there's 4 groups, and in the 4 groups, the first group, they were instructed to play the piano for 2 hours a day for 5 days, total of 10 hours. And when they played the piano for 10 hours across 5 days, they were taught by an instructor just a simple piano sequence, just like a 10-key sequence, maybe 20-key sequence. It's not as specific in the book, but you know, it's a short sequence, okay? And so they would play that sequence over and over and over. They weren't digressing from the sequence. They weren't going into new sequences. They were playing the same sequence over and over and over again for 10 hours across 5 days, okay? So imagine just learning a sequence and just repeating it over and over and over, okay? The second group, they also played for 10 hours across 5 days, 2 hours a day, okay? However, they didn't learn any particular sequence. They just played random keys. They just played random keys, okay? They're like, hey, listen, we're not going to teach you anything. We're not going to give you a music notebook. We're not going to teach you a sequence. Just like play the piano for like 10 hours and let's see what happens, okay? Then there was the third group, okay? Also 10 hours. But here's what was interesting about the third group. The third group was visually shown the sequence that was taught to group 1. So group 1 physically, I'll add a note, they physically played the sequence. Group 2, they were also sequence-based, but they didn't physically play it. That's the key indicator, or key difference between group 1 and 3, is group 1 physically played the sequence. Group 3, they just mentally rehearsed the sequence, okay? So they saw it and they visualized it. And they visualized it for a significant period of time, again, 10 hours, right? So they're just sitting there in the mental visualization of playing this piano sequence, okay? And then group 4, they did nothing. Now here's what's interesting about this, okay? There's a couple different outcomes they found from this study. One's more obvious than others, okay? The first outcome, which I believe is the obvious one, group 1, in terms of their outcome, they saw a dramatic lift in their progress, in the region of the brain that learns how to play piano. They studied that region and they saw positive manipulation, which correlated to them quite literally becoming better piano players, okay? Now I'm going to skip group 2 for a second. We'll come back to that. Now group 3, they mentally rehearsed. They didn't physically play. They also saw a substantial lift in their ability to play the piano in terms of the brain region. And what they said was, hey, listen, we have found over and over that the brain itself cannot understand the difference between physical reality and very, very intensive thought, kind of a rehearsed mental reality, okay? So they saw almost identical progress in these groups, and funny enough, group 3 didn't even touch the keys, okay? Now group 4, who did nothing, well, they got nothing. There was no change. We'll add that over here. There was no change for these individuals because they didn't do anything, okay? That's the laws of the world. You do nothing, you get nothing, okay? That one's obvious, right? Now the group 2 was by and large the most interesting in the case of capacity and sales. And let me tell you why. Group 2 played 10 hours over the course of 5 days. They played random keynotes, okay? They saw virtually no increase in their skills or any sort of positive, again, brain region manipulation in terms of positive neurological changes, okay? They saw nothing. They saw no change. They played 10 hours a day, okay? So now you might be wondering, like, how does this even relate to back to business and the theory of single constraints? Well, here's how it relates. First and foremost, as an action item for this video, you must first decide, is your problem sales or is it capacity? Okay, that's first and foremost. Okay, number 1. The second thing, which you can learn off this study, most business owners are in group 2 in the way they go about their life, okay? Because we as business owners have 1,000 different actions that we can take every day inside of our business. But only a few, 1 to 3, maybe even 5, of those actions will actually equate to positive growth. So what happens in businesses is you have these owners, and maybe you're watching this, you might be one of them, where you go home every day, 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week, and every night you're wiped. You're on the couch, watching TV, doing whatever you do to unwind, and you're like, man, I am just smoke from the day. And you get to this like kind of chronic false thinking that you were productive. But you weren't productive. Because many of you watching, you've been at the same revenue for years. And how is that? Because you do random shit throughout the day. You play random keys. Okay, you do a little bit of patient care, you do a little bit of sales, you do a little bit of marketing, you do back to admin, you go back to patient care, and then you do this. So instead of just filling up one bucket that's actually going to move the business, you fill 10 buckets 10% full. And you feel like you should be getting somewhere because you're tired, right? Because remember, like the group 2, they still worked on this for 10 hours. So what does that mean? That means that time is not the variable of success by any means. Time is not the variable. If time was the variable, then group 2 would have seen a positive uptick as with group 1 and 3. But they didn't, okay? So time is not the variable. So when you're spending time, but you're doing random stuff throughout the day, you're doing one of the 1,000 activities that you need to do just to stay busy, you need to slow it down, okay? Because as we've proven, literally scientifically, random keys, random activities, done randomly throughout the day will leave you tired, but they won't lead to any forward progress. So the next thing for you to do is once you've identified is it sales or is it capacity, then you need to also identify the 1 to 3 actions that will help you overcome your single constraint. Is your single constraint sales or capacity? Define that first through math, through looking at the P&L, through actually doing due diligence, not just being like how I feel, okay? And then once you've said, okay, it's sales, cool, what are the 1 to 3 actions that I need to do every single day to bridge the sales gap, to close that constraint? Because your goal is to keep going back and forth between these two things over and over. So if you know your thing is sales right now, then you spend all your time on sales, all your time on marketing, okay? And then when you've done it so much that your business is at capacity, then you go to capacity and you solve that problem too, okay? So if you truly understand this, you know simplicity, that businesses are only increasing sales or increasing capacity, first and foremost. And based on the scientific study of the brain, you can't do random shit every day and expect to get anywhere, okay? Time doesn't matter. Many people have spent their whole career, 50 years, 40 years, whatever it is, in practice, and they're still not where they want to be. But they've worked their hours, right? They've worked their hours, but they're not where they want to be because they've spent too much time in group 2, in the random shit category, okay? So I want you to take action, okay? The biggest disrespect you can do on this channel if you're watching this video is watch the video, get all excited about the education that you've just put into your brain, and not take any sort of action. That's the most disrespect you could give me as your leader on the channel, okay? So I want you to first define, is it sales or capacity? And then define your 1 to 3 actions, not 1,000. Don't get caught in the trap of everything's important, okay? Most shit doesn't matter in business. Figure out your 1 to 3 and take action on it, okay? Now, if you like this video, I appreciate a like. Hit the subscribe. We do put out videos once a week. We've been sleeping for a few weeks because I had to actually add capacity in my own business, to be honest with you. So I've been a little bit behind, but we're putting out 1 video a week, okay, on this channel. And maybe even more on weeks that we're feeling ambitious. And we're only talking about how to get clinics to 200 grand a month. We're talking about the actions, the mindset, and the character traits that individuals must have in order to get to that type of revenue, okay? If you want to have a conversation deeper with us, we do help with the sales side of things, okay? I'll leave a link below for you to have a conversation with myself and my team. Feel free to book in with us, even if you're confused. Even if you're like, man, I don't know if it's sales or capacity, book in with us. We'll be able to tell you right away where you're at, okay? As long as you're willing to share honest and transparent numbers, we can tell you very quickly on what you need to be doing and give you an action plan, okay? So I'll leave a link below if you want to have that conversation. The goal of that convo will be able to make your life simpler, to identify what you need to be working on and why that is the constraint for you at the current time, okay? So at a minimum, you'll leave with guidance on what to do next, okay? So if you want to have that conversation, I'll leave a link below for me and my team. Otherwise, take action on these. What's your constraint? What are the actions to fix it? I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.